If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit. Epictetus. There's one habit, just one, that silently decides whether you stay calm or lose control, whether you lead with strength or fall to pieces. And most men never even notice it. This one habit isn't about talent. It's not about how much you know or how strong you appear. It's about how you react when the world pushes your buttons, when you're insulted, ignored, disrespected, misunderstood. This is where real power is tested. The Stoics didn't chase control over others. They mastered the only control that matters, control over their own reactions. Because once you master this habit, nothing can truly affect you. Not betrayal, not chaos, not failure, and especially not the opinions of those who haven't walked a mile in your shoes. In today's world, staying emotionally grounded isn't easy. You're bombarded with criticism, pressure, and noise. But this video will show you how to cut through it, how to use stoic emotional control and practical self-discipline to regain command over your life. If you've ever overreacted and regretted it, this is your chance to change that. Right now, starting today. So before we dive into the 8 Stoic strategies that build inner strength, hit that like button, subscribe for more grounded wisdom, and share this video with another man who needs it. Because real men don't just react, they choose how to respond. And that choice starts now. 1. The moment you pause, you reclaim your power. Most men believe strength is about doing more, acting fast, responding first, speaking louder. But the Stoic knows otherwise. Real strength isn't loud, it's quiet. It lives in that split second between trigger and reaction. In that moment, everything changes. You either let your impulses take control, or you take control of your impulses. That's where power begins. Emotional discipline isn't born in grand gestures. It's forged in the silence before the storm. When someone disrespects you, when things go wrong, when your pride is threatened. In these moments, most people react. They lash out, they raise their voice, they try to win. And in doing so, they lose something much greater, their center, their clarity, their command. Pausing doesn't mean weakness, it means awareness. It means you're no longer a slave to whatever poked your ego. You don't let a careless comment, a rude stare, or a shift in someone else's mood hijack your peace. You see the impulse rise, and instead of feeding it, you hold it in your hand like a stone, observing, steady, unbothered. That's the moment where discipline is chosen. Most men aren't trained to pause. They're trained to respond, to defend, to attack. That habit feels powerful in the moment, but it's an illusion. Because after the outburst comes the regret, after the reaction comes the consequence. And underneath it all is a man who still doesn't feel in control. This cycle repeats until you realize that the real fight isn't out there. It's inside. The battle is between your reaction and your reason, between what's automatic and what's aligned with who you truly want to be. The Stoics understood this better than anyone. Epictetus said, if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit. That's not blame, it's permission. Permission to take your mind back, to reclaim your power. Because the insult didn't break you, the disrespect didn't define you, your response did. And that response is your choice, every time. So, how do you practice this? You start with one habit, pause. Not long, just enough. One breath, one full second. When you feel the urge to speak, to retaliate, to explain, don't, not yet. Feel the tension rise and let it be. Don't run from it, don't release it, just observe. Let the moment pass through you. In that stillness, clarity appears. And with clarity comes better action. This isn't suppression, it's precision. You're not avoiding your feelings, you're taking command of them. You're not pretending something doesn't matter, you're choosing not to let it own you. The world will keep testing your buttons. It will challenge your ego. It will tempt you to break your calm. But your job isn't to silence the world. Your job is to silence the storm inside. That one pause, silent, brief, deliberate, is a declaration. It says, I own this moment. I choose my response. I won't be moved by noise. Because calm is not the absence of fire. It's standing in the middle of it and not being burned. Start there. One breath, one pause, one quiet refusal to be shaken. And you'll find in time, nothing can truly affect you. 2. Stop taking everything personally. Most of what hurts you isn't what people do. It's what you think it means. A raised voice, a cold glance, a sarcastic comment. These are just signals, but your mind gives them weight. It attaches stories, intentions, meaning, and in doing so, gives away your peace. The habit of taking things personally is one of the most draining patterns a man can carry. Because the moment you believe it's always about you, you become emotionally exposed. You live on the edge, bracing for impact, waiting to defend yourself from every slight. That's not a strength, that's emotional chaos disguised as sensitivity. Stoicism breaks that cycle. It doesn't tell you to harden, it tells you to see clearly. When Epictetus said, "It's not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them," he gave men a key to unlock mental clarity. You don't have to believe every feeling. You don't have to react to every tone. The world is full of people who project, who unload their stress, who speak from their own pain. If you internalize all of it, you're not being wise. You're just absorbing noise. You don't owe every insult a reaction. You don't need to fight every disagreement. Most of it isn't about you at all. People speak from their wounds. They criticize from their limitations. When you stop personalizing everything, you begin to observe without absorbing. You hear the words, but you don't let them in. You see the behavior, but it doesn't shake you. You remain still. You remain centered. That's control, not over them, but over yourself. It's easy to say, don't take it personally, but hard to live it. Because the ego wants recognition, it wants fairness, it wants to feel respected. And every time you don't get that, your first instinct is to take offense. But ask yourself, is your peace worth trading for every offense that comes your way? Do you really want to be the man who's always on edge, waiting to be validated, constantly defending your position? The Stoic doesn't need to be understood. He needs to be in command. He knows that inner strength doesn't come from being treated perfectly. It comes from staying grounded, even when others don't meet your expectations. That's where real self-respect begins. Not in demanding better behavior from others, but in not needing it to stay stable. To live this, you must train yourself to pause before interpreting. When someone criticizes you, don't jump to defend. Listen, observe, ask yourself, is this about me or about them? Is this helpful or just noise? That small pause is a pivot, one that shifts you from reactivity to reason. And with time, this discipline becomes instinct. You no longer fall into emotional traps. You no longer carry offense like armor. There's power in detachment, not apathy, but clarity. You still care. You still respond, but you do it from a place of command, not defense. And that shift, subtle as it is, makes you untouchable. Start small. Next time you feel slighted, say nothing. Breathe. Let the comment pass through you. Let your silence speak for your strength. The less personally you take things, the freer you become. Not because the world gets softer, but because you get sharper. 3. Choose peace over the need to be right. There's a moment in every argument where you feel it. The rising heat in your chest, the sharp urge to prove your point, the internal demand to win. That urge feels righteous, it feels strong. But it's not. It's just noise. The need to be right is a habit, and a dangerous one. It convinces you that validation is more important than clarity, that being understood is more valuable than being in control. But the Stoic man doesn't argue to win. He lives to stay aligned with his values, especially in moments of conflict. And in doing so, he gains a power louder than words, calm. The ego fights for the last word. It wants to correct, to confront, to dominate. But real strength is quiet. It doesn't chase applause or demand agreement. It doesn't explain to be seen. It speaks only when speaking is useful. The Stoic doesn't avoid conflict because he fears it. He chooses peace because he understands its weight. He knows how much energy is lost in defending pride, how much clarity is sacrificed for the sake of being right. He sees through the illusion of verbal victory. This doesn't mean silence is always the answer. It means silence is often the wisest one, especially when words would only feed the fire. Most men enter arguments to feel powerful, but they leave empty, agitated, misunderstood, emotionally drained. The cost of proving yourself is rarely worth the gain. And the habit of constantly needing to be right slowly erodes your focus, your time, and your emotional control. Stoicism rewires this reflex. It teaches you to shift from ego to principle. You don't speak because your feelings are hurt. You speak because there is something necessary to say. You don't argue because you've been challenged. You respond only if your response serves something greater than your pride. This shift, from ego-driven reaction to value-driven action, is subtle but life-changing. It turns you from a man chasing respect into one who commands it silently. Letting go of the need to be right isn't surrender, it's clarity. It's knowing that silence won't hurt you, but impulsive words will. It's realizing that you don't need to correct everyone who misunderstands you, that you don't need to fix every flawed opinion, that not every comment needs a comeback. The more you speak with intention, the less you'll feel the need to speak at all. You practice this in the quiet moments, when you're tempted to write the last message, to explain your side again, to jump in just to clarify one more thing. You stop, you breathe, you ask, is this about truth or is it about ego? That one question pulls you out of the emotional storm and back into your power. Peace isn't passive, it's a form of control. It's choosing your battles wisely, preserving your energy, and protecting your inner space. It's not about letting others win. It's about knowing you don't have to play their game to prove yourself. The man who can walk away without a word and still feel whole holds a different kind of strength, one most people never reach. Start with the next argument that finds you. Don't reach for dominance. Reach for discipline. Let them say what they need. Let the noise pass. And stand still in the storm, not because you couldn't speak, but because you chose not to. That's when silence becomes power. And that's when peace becomes your advantage. 4. Master your inner voice. Every man walks with a voice in his head. It speaks when no one's watching, it echoes in silence, it feeds his confidence or his doubt. That voice becomes the architecture of his actions. If it is sharp, grounded, and focused, he moves with clarity. If it is chaotic, fearful, or self-defeating, he walks in circles, lost in hesitation. To master your emotions, your decisions, and your life, you must first master your inner voice. This voice is not random, it is trained. Every complaint you repeat, every fear you let run wild, every harsh word you direct at yourself becomes a mental loop, and loops become habits. Without realizing it, you wake up criticizing yourself, second-guessing every move, expecting failure before you even begin. This isn't sensitivity, it's mental sabotage. The enemy isn't out there. It's the pattern you've allowed to grow inside, and it feeds off your silence. Stoicism teaches a different approach. You don't fight the voice with force. You reframe it with discipline. You observe it without flinching. You begin to ask, is this voice helping me or weakening me? Most of what you say to yourself you'd never say to someone you respect, so why keep speaking to yourself like that? The Stoic replaces internal noise with internal command. He turns judgment into clarity, panic into precision. His voice isn't louder, it's cleaner. This doesn't mean lying to yourself with positivity. It means stripping away the false narratives that weaken your resolve. Instead of, I always mess things up, you say, I made a mistake, I'll learn from it. Instead of, I'm not good enough, you say, this is hard, but I can grow through it. You don't sugarcoat, you realign. Every word you repeat inside shapes how you see, how you act, and how you lead. Words matter, even the silent ones. Most men try to fix their habits by changing their actions, but without changing the script behind those actions, nothing lasts. You can train in the gym, build discipline, wake up early, but if the voice inside is still calling you weak, it'll drag you back every time. That's why mastery starts inward. The body follows the mind, and the mind obeys the voice it hears most. Training this voice isn't about motivation, it's about attention. You start noticing what you say to yourself when you fail, when you're rejected, when you're alone. You observe it without judgment, and then, quietly, you adjust. You don't let the voice run wild, you lead it, you give it standards, just like a Stoic would. There's power in silence, but only when that silence is built on inner clarity. If your thoughts are full of chaos, your silence becomes avoidance. But if your thoughts are clear, your silence becomes a command. That's why self-talk must be clean, strong, and calm. You're not repeating affirmations, you're recoding your identity through repetition. Each line is a new groove in your mind. Over time, your voice becomes your ally, not your saboteur. Start tonight. Pay attention to the next critical thought. Don't argue with it. Just notice it, hold it, and rewrite it. I failed becomes I'm learning. They didn't respect me becomes their judgment doesn't define me. Small shift, massive effect. That's how inner power grows, not by shouting louder, but by thinking sharper. Control the voice, and the rest will follow. 5. Not everyone deserves your explanation. A man wastes his strength not through action, but through unnecessary justification. The need to explain everything, to be understood by everyone, is a silent weakness disguised as honesty, masked as openness. But true power doesn't explain itself. It doesn't plead for approval, it speaks when needed. And when silence serves better, it chooses silence. Self-mastery requires this, knowing when to speak, and more importantly, when not to. That's not arrogance, it's focus. A disciplined mind protects its energy. It doesn't throw it into every misunderstanding, every opinion, every reaction. Modern culture rewards exposure. It tells you to be transparent, to explain your every move, to clear every doubt before someone assumes wrong. But that habit breeds exhaustion. You stretch yourself thin, trying to correct people's perceptions. You hand out your thoughts like currency, hoping they'll buy you approval. Yet every word spent on convincing the wrong audience is energy stolen from what actually matters. The more you explain, the more you beg. And a man who begs to be understood is already giving away control. The Stoic doesn't fear misunderstanding, he expects it. And instead of chasing clarity in others, he deepens clarity within himself. He knows that truth stands on its own, that not every comment deserves an answer. That silence is not a weakness, it's a boundary. If someone doesn't respect your space, your values, your effort, they haven't earned your explanation. Because real clarity doesn't come from what you say, it comes from how you live. The more aligned you are, the less you need to speak. When you feel the urge to explain yourself, pause. Ask whether this person truly deserves access to your thoughts. Are they seeking truth, or just looking for a reason to judge? If they've already made up their mind, no amount of logic will change it. And if they haven't earned your trust, no truth you offer will be safe with them. This is not coldness, it's discernment. You don't owe everyone your process, you don't owe them your reasoning, you owe yourself the discipline to preserve your energy for what matters most. The need to be understood is rooted in insecurity. You explain because you fear being seen the wrong way. But strength doesn't fear misjudgment. It stays calm in the storm of false assumptions. It lets others believe what they want while staying anchored in what's real. A man who knows himself doesn't panic when others don't. He doesn't water down his truth for easier digestion. He walks forward, silent, firm, and clear. The habit of over-explaining will drain you faster than any argument. You'll burn energy defending things that never needed defense. The Stoic simplifies this. He lets results speak. He lets consistency speak. He lets time reveal what words cannot. You don't need to convince the world. You need to stay in command of yourself. Next time you're about to explain, don't. Let your action carry the weight, let your silence make the statement, and let your peace say what your mouth no longer needs to. In that quiet, you'll find something stronger than approval. Freedom. The freedom to walk your path without apology. And that, for the man who chooses discipline, is enough. 6. Approve yourself before seeking validation. Strength begins where external approval ends. As long as attention, applause, or validation are required for action, freedom remains out of reach. The need to be validated is quiet but persistent. It slips into every decision, every sentence, every gesture. It shapes the way you speak, the way you hold yourself, and the way you show up in the world. Not because you want to serve your purpose, but because you hope to be seen. Stoicism breaks this dependence by shifting focus from outer reward to inner standard. You don't act to be approved. You act because your values demand it. Seeking validation might feel harmless at first. It can even look like ambition. You work hard, you do well, and you want someone to notice. But beneath that urge is a dangerous habit, outsourcing your worth. Every time you need someone to say you're good enough, you give them power over how you feel, how you think, and how you move forward. That's not growth. That's emotional dependence wearing a disciplined mask. And the more you rely on it, the more it erodes your sense of self. Approval from others is unpredictable. It shifts with their moods, their values, and their judgments. What earns praise today might be ignored tomorrow. If your confidence rises and falls with external feedback, your identity is unstable. And when the applause fades, and it always does, you're left questioning everything. Stoicism doesn't reject validation. It simply refuses to depend on it. You can receive praise, but you don't need it. You can hear criticism, but it doesn't define you. You remain anchored to your own standard. That standard is built quietly, not with noise, not with grand claims, but with alignment. Who you are in private must match who you claim to be in public. When your actions reflect your values consistently, even when no one is watching, you build self-respect. That self-respect becomes your core. It doesn't need defending, performing, or explaining. It simply holds. Stoics live by internal clarity. They don't wait for the world to clap before they act. They don't ask the world to understand their path. They choose it, walk it, and refine it without needing applause. That doesn't make them arrogant. It makes them free. Because when the world disagrees, they don't collapse. When approval is withheld, they don't chase it. Their compass points inward. And it's that quiet independence that makes them unshakable. This habit of seeking validation can be broken, but only if replaced with something stronger. Start with your standards. Ask what kind of man you want to be when no one's watching. Ask what values you'd protect, even if no one praised you for it. Then act, in silence, with discipline. Let your work speak. Let your presence explain. Let your consistency become the loudest thing in the room. When you do this long enough, you'll stop wondering what others think, because your own approval will speak louder than their applause ever could. Begin now. Do one difficult thing today, not to be noticed, not to be praised, but because it strengthens the man you say you are. And when you finish, say nothing. Just move forward. That's what Stoic self-respect looks like. Not loud, not needy, but steady. And that steadiness is what makes you untouchable. 7. Think less to see more clearly. Clarity doesn't come from thinking harder. It comes from thinking less, but with precision. When the mind spins non-stop, every thought begins to echo the last. Overthinking doesn't solve problems. It distorts them. It creates complexity where simplicity was enough. It adds noise to silence. And when that becomes a habit, decisions take longer, confidence weakens, and stillness disappears. Mental clutter becomes the default state. You wake up already tired, not from action, but from endless analysis. What should have taken a moment now takes hours of inner debate. You don't move forward. You circle the same thought until the opportunity passes. Stoicism doesn't reward overanalysis. It rewards clarity. It strips away what doesn't serve, what doesn't move, what doesn't align. The Stoic trains the mind to stay sharp, not busy. To observe what's happening without attaching meaning to every emotion, without obsessing over every outcome. Thought becomes a tool, not a trap. Most people believe that more thought equals more wisdom. But wisdom is selective. It knows when to reflect and when to stop. It knows that clarity rises when the storm settles, not while it's raging. The modern world glorifies mental overload. You're praised for being constantly plugged in, always evaluating, always processing. But no one tells you that thinking too much is also a form of fear. You analyze because you're unsure. You repeat the same decision because you're afraid to act. You seek more information because you doubt your own instinct. But instinct is built on values, and values don't shift when your thoughts do. The Stoic builds mental discipline by anchoring thought to principle, not impulse. The moment you reduce unnecessary thinking, you free space for decisive action. You begin to move with more certainty, not because you have every answer, but because your mind is no longer cluttered with what-if scenarios. Thinking less doesn't mean ignoring problems. It means cutting through the fog. It means asking, what's essential, and discarding the rest. The Stoic mind doesn't chase 10 options. It eliminates until one remains. That's where calm lives, in simplicity, not in complexity. This practice starts with awareness. Notice when your mind spirals. Notice when one thought becomes 10. Interrupt that loop. Ask, what is within my control right now? That question narrows the field. It sharpens your focus. It pulls you out of the noise and into clarity. When you operate from control, you think clearly. When you try to control the uncontrollable, you drown in distraction. Each moment offers a choice: spiral or simplify. Most problems don't need more thinking. They need a clearer frame. What matters? What aligns? What now? These 3 filters refine your mental lens. They bring your mind back to the present, back to the decision, not the drama. And from that grounded place, your actions become cleaner, your emotions calmer, your results stronger. Thinking less doesn't make you passive. It makes you powerful. It means your thoughts obey you, not the other way around. And from that place of quiet control, you see what others miss. You hear what others can't. You act while others hesitate. Train your mind to pause, to cut through, to reset. That reset, even just once a day, is where clarity is built. Not in the noise, but in the stillness you choose to protect. Let that stillness guide you, and the noise will no longer own you. 8. Silence is the wisest response. Control often looks like silence. When everything in you wants to react, to strike back, to defend your pride, holding your ground without a word becomes the most powerful move. The urge to speak, to explain, to fight feels like strength, but it's often a mask for emotional impulse. The Stoic doesn't ignore injustice, but he understands that not every confrontation requires noise. True strength is selective. It doesn't show up just because someone demands it. It shows up when it serves something higher than ego. Silence is not weakness, it's restraint. And restraint is a mark of inner command. In a world where people respond to every comment, correct every slight, defend every perception, silence becomes a weapon, one that confuses, protects, and reclaims your energy. You don't owe a reaction to every situation. You don't owe your peace to anyone's chaos. The more you train yourself to respond only when necessary, the more power you conserve. And what you conserve, you can channel into discipline, into clarity, for the purpose. Most overreact because they feel threatened, but silence proves you are not. It proves you're anchored. You've outgrown the need to win every verbal battle. You've stopped playing games that cost your peace. You listen, you breathe, you assess. And when the time is right, you move, not out of emotion, but out of intention. This gap between impulse and action is where the Stoic lives. In that space, the wise speak less but say more. The wise act less but impact more. Retaliation is often immediate, but transformation is quiet. Silence disarms the one expecting a reaction. It exposes their noise by refusing to echo it. This doesn't mean silence becomes avoidance, it becomes discernment. You speak when your words have weight. You respond when your presence alone is not enough. But if your silence carries the message, let it stand. Because sometimes, nothing reveals your strength more than saying nothing at all. In conflict, the loudest voice isn't the strongest, it's usually the most reactive. The man who holds still when provoked doesn't do it because he lacks words. He does it because he's mastered timing. He knows that power grows in stillness. People often reveal more by how they react to silence than by what they say. He knows that when you stop chasing validation through speech, your presence begins to speak for itself. Silence also protects your focus. Speaking wastes energy. Over-explaining drains discipline. Defending every move distracts from the purpose. The Stoic conserves that energy. He doesn't need to prove what time and results will show. He moves quietly, without drama, and because of that, his actions carry more weight. Silence trains the mind to think clearly, the heart to remain calm, and the ego to stay in its place. Begin with one moment. The next time you feel pushed to react, wait. Count your breath. Let the pressure rise without releasing it. Then decide, from reason, not emotion, whether words are even necessary. You'll find that most times, they're not. And in that decision, you'll feel something rare. Control. The kind that doesn't need to be seen to be respected. The kind that builds peace, not by retreating, but by choosing stillness over impulse. That's the kind of silence that makes you untouchable. In a world that moves fast, reacts faster, and demands constant noise, the ability to pause, reflect, and respond with purpose becomes a rare strength. You've just explored 8 habits rooted in Stoic philosophy, each one designed to help you reclaim your inner control. But this isn't about knowing more. It's about practicing deeply. Real change doesn't come from information, it comes from repetition, from discipline, from choosing mastery over emotion, again and again. When you train yourself to pause before reacting, to detach from offense, to speak less and act with calm clarity, you build more than emotional strength. You build trust in yourself. You stop being pulled by noise, by impulse, by the need to be validated or understood. You begin to move with focus. You simplify your thinking. You let silence speak for you. And as you continue this path, you become what others cannot shake. But this kind of control must be earned. Through practice, through patience, through the daily work of rewiring how you respond to pressure, disrespect, and uncertainty. Start with small moments. One pause, one breath, One deliberate choice to stay still when others would react. Then repeat it tomorrow and the next. Over time, your mind will sharpen, your emotions will steady, your presence will grow quieter, but more powerful. If this message spoke to something in you, take a moment and share your experience below. What moment tested you recently? How did you respond? Your insight may give another man clarity when he needs it most. Because this isn't just philosophy, it's training. Training for the mind, training for strength, and training for a life where nothing, not words, not stress, not chaos, can affect you unless you let it. And you won't. Not anymore.